board meeting to order. Would you please take roll?
Ms. Adkins. Mr. Hendricks. Mr. Houston.
Here.
Mrs. McDaniel. Here. Mr. Stoffer.
Here.
Mr. Wyledge.
Here.
Mrs. Sheppel.
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the March 22nd, 2021 agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston.
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel. Yes. Mr. Stoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge.
Yes.
Mrs. Sheppel.
Yes. Commendation and good news. Oh, no, let's go ahead with the 2021-2022 budget public hearing. We will go ahead and open that.
All right.
Was that duly,
Yes. it was-
Publicized?
Yes, it was
Okay.
published in the Nonpareil within the time restraints.
all right, thank you.
So Lewis Central's general operating fund budget is substantially influenced in terms of total budget authorization and funding components by Iowa statutes. The maximum authorized budget is the school district's maximum authorized budget for the general fund expenditures and is also known as the total spending authority, or TSA, and it is calculated as follows. The combined district cost is the major factor of this. It is $27,339,382. There's a few other items in there that are smaller, and then the next significant one is the miscellaneous income. Miscellaneous income is going to be projected at $7.19 million. It is a little bit of an increase, and majority of that is due to one-time restricted funding for federal funding for COVID. The total spending authority is the total dollar limits that a school district can spend. It represents the legal and statutory budget limits. Unused TSA carries over to the next year as the unspent balance. Overspending on TSA is a violation of the statutory authority. The unspent balance is not cash, though. Here is a chart of the supplemental state aid, the history of it. For FY22, the state aid was set by the legislature at 2.4%. The state cost per pupil is $727, and that is an increase of $169 per student, resident student. The combined district cost is formula driven, and it is the weighted enrollment of the district cost per pupil as determined by the state multiplied. For 2022 budget, the count that we use is the October of 2022, and we had a decrease of 16.2 students. And this then is calculated through the aid and levy worksheet. The miscellaneous income is the income that I discussed earlier, the $7.19 million. This is driven from federal, state, and local sources. Many of these sources are categorical or restricted purpose funds, and that varies according to the source and levels of funding. And everything except for state aid or property taxes is a miscellaneous income. Some examples are your federal monies, transportation, state grants, interest, student fees, open enrollment and tuition are also a huge factor for Lewis Central. And then the new funding that we would be receiving, some of in FY22 would be the ESSER and GEAR funding, which is restricted for COVID uses. The board directs some of these programs. In the general fund, we have the at-risk dropout prevention program, and we also have the cash reserve levy. The cash reserve levy is limited to 20% of the total general fund prior year expenditures minus the unexpended fund balance. So in the 2022 budget, Lewis Central is not able to levy cash reserve. The special revenue funds are the 33-cent PEPAL and the management levy. Then we do have voter-directed programs, which would be in the general fund, our 10-year instructional support program, and in special revenues would be our 50-cent PEPAL levy. Debt levies, but at this current time, the district does not have any property tax funded debt levies, and then the local sales tax and service tax, but that does not affect the property tax rate. So the operating fund revenues by source here, were listed. Our biggest one is our property taxes and state foundation aid at $26 million. Both of those are 100% state formula driven. We have the instructional support, which is set by the board and the voters. And then the miscellaneous income, which is derived from different sources from the federal, state, and local level. We also have the at-risk dropout prevention, which the board approved in November. So the total budgeted revenues for FY22 is $35.8 million. And here is a pie chart showing the percentages of the operating fund and how that contributes. The FY22 property tax levy is set to be 10.42872 dollars. That is a decrease of 1.611 per $1,000 levy. The biggest factor in this is the cash reserve levy, that we are not able to levy for cash reserve, so that is the biggest factor in the decrease in the levy rate. This is the total tax levy and how it is come to with either the voter, the board, or the state portion of it. So you can see majority of it, 74% of it is set by the state, and then the board is 13% and voter is 14%. The next one is the history of the levy rates and the property tax levy rate per 1,000, and you can see that we were on a steady decline for the most part, and then we did have a pretty drastic decline in this past year. Obviously, that was partially from the decrease in the cash reserve levy, but we also had another significant item take place, and that is the district valuation. Our district valuation did have an increase of $197 million, which is a 15% increase. It is the second highest increase that I could find in the state of Iowa. And I will tell you that there's only one other, the next closest in Pot County is a 5% increase. So we did have a pretty significant increase there. I did talk to the county assessor about that. We did have one major property tax payer in the district that had a very large increase that over a fourth of that increase was on that one taxpayer. There's also the assessed values are increasing in the district for our current valuations, and then plus we have the additional valuation increases from new builds in the district. So as you can see, this is the surrounding district tax rates, and this is for FY21 and then FY20, so it does not take into consideration the new tax rates for FY22. So we are one of the lowest. We are the lowest for FY21. We were close to the lowest in FY20, so we will still probably be the lowest in the area for FY22. And the authorized budget does not equal the line item budget. The line item budget is the district's plan to use the anticipated revenue to set expenditure limits to maintain the district fiscal health. The authorized budget establishes statutory spending maximums to build capacity to spend all or most of the available funds without any intention to spend it all. Is there any questions?
I just wanted to make a comment and remind the board, I had shared in one of the weekly updates about the property tax levy. And I think for anybody listening, I don't know how many people we have online tonight, but you know, it's a love-hate situation, because it's actually good news in the fact that it means our community's thriving. And that's always good for school districts to hear. On the other side, it means that's going to drive that levy in a way that means less revenue. But and that's the way it's designed. It's designed to keep schools from taking windfalls and vice versa. So it's tough to see a levy change like that, but it's good news about the community, and we should keep that in mind.
Definitely. Does anyone have any questions?
Nice presentation, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Was there anyone online that have submitted any questions? No. All right. Then we will go ahead and close our 2021-2022 budget hearing.
Any questions, Bob?
We'll catch you up later. All right. We'll go on to comments, commendation and good news.
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Dave.
I do have a couple of things to share. A lot of great things have been happening in the schools these past several weeks. Our activities, show choirs, jazz bands, lots of great things on the part of kids. A few to point out: History Day successes, especially at the middle school. We have 4 students who are moving on to the state level competition. And there are their names, 2 7th graders and 2 8th graders. And we have 1 10th grader who has been moved on to the state level competition as well. So congratulations to them. We've partnered with the Southwest Iowa STEM Hub this year for our Camp Learn Some More at Titan Hill. And I encourage you to, I shared this document with you earlier today. I encourage you to go onto the website and explore the great things that are happening in conjunction with our parents through Camp Learn Some More. Also point out, you know, spring activities have started. We didn't get to say that last year, and I think that's good news, right? And then last but not least, I'd like to share 40 seconds of a video that one of our parents put together of our construction at the Operations Center and at the high school. I'm going to show 20 seconds at the beginning and 20 seconds at the end.
Okay.
But the video shows a drone flyby of that entire campus. It's really very interesting. And you can see there's plenty of fast work being done at this site. Now skip to here, and this is the high school side. It's very exciting when the tall parts of the building start to go in, isn't it?
it's neat to see it from that angle, because we're just eye level and driving by, so it's really neat to see it at that angle.
That's all we have.
Is there anyone else have commendations, good news? Okay. And we'll go on to comments and suggestions. This is the first portion of our agenda that anyone can address the board. If there's anyone in the audience or anyone online. Is there any comments online? Nope, not online. Okay. We'll go on then to consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
And this is our updated personnel sheet.
Yes, there is one addition in item F.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Shovel.
Yes. Report 7.01, COVID updates.
I'm going to keep this very brief tonight in lieu of our very lengthy agenda. We've got a lot of attention to get to. Just the long and short of kind of an update on our COVID numbers. We're maintaining in really good shape. A little concern starting off the beginning of last week. We had a little bit of a peak, but as of today, district-wide, we have 4 positives. We've got 13 students total in quarantine. Again, just comparing those two numbers, back in November, we had well over 200 in quarantine, and we had 44 positive. So that's good. The county rate has, we were getting down pretty low. It was down actually below 5% at some point. That has been going back up a little bit. Today it's 6.4%. And in all of that, again, that all being relatively good news, showing that we're maintaining, we're doing, again, still the right things. One caveat to that is we do now know that the UK variant is in Potawatomi County, and we have had a few positives on the UK variant. The good news so far with that, though, is there's nothing to really report about it, because it's we don't see any rapid spread. In fact, over the course of this week, our numbers have continued to decrease. So we're keeping a close eye on that to make sure that doesn't become something of a concern. The good news with the UK variant and the other ones is that the vaccines answer well to them. The bad news is just that it's a quick spread and easier for people to catch. So we would be, of course, concerned that our student population would possibly spread that more than we've seen in the past amongst themselves. Not seeing it. Again, we were a little bit nervous at the beginning of the week. I'm saying the beginning of the week. This is the beginning of the week. Beginning of last week. Forgive me. Still on last week. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we're going to hope that spring break doesn't bring some bad results. But as of today, the news is predominantly good with our COVID numbers, so we'll keep doing what we're doing. I'm fortunate to say, I think we're all fortunate to say, that the questions about are we continuing with mitigation, are we continuing with masks, I haven't had any of them lately, which is a very good thing, because for a while we were getting that a lot. I was getting that quite a bit. Now, knowing that the UK variant is around, the answer is, of course, we wouldn't even remotely consider changing anything. And by the way, when people say, well, you don't have to worry about your staff anymore, they're, most of them are vaccinated. Well, it doesn't mean you can't carry it,
Correct.
And we do want to protect our children and who they take things home to. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We've had success with it through 2 trimesters, and we hope to have complete success through a 3rd trimester.
Absolutely. Okay. Discussion items, 8.01, bleacher purchase and installation for the middle school.
Yeah, I'll turn this over to Randy in just a minute, but just a quick synopsis. This is a completion of a phased project at the middle school. These bleachers are in bad need of being replaced, quickly becoming, I think, a safety concern. We don't operate them right now. We keep them open, correct, Randy? And so again, this is not really a new plan. This is just carrying forward what the plan has been in the past. It's time to do it. We have it budgeted to do it, and we want to get in the queue, so to speak, so we can make sure that we get this done in good time over the summer and not, we don't want to showing up 1 week before school starts to start ripping out bleachers and such. So with that, Randy, you can add to, take away.
So, to DK's point, I apologize if my voice cracks. There's something going on in my throat, so. But to DK's point, yeah, 2019 is when we did the east side. This is the west side. And really, how the bleachers are being utilized right now because of the COVID situation is that they're eating lunch right now on the bleachers. So we can't push them back. We got 4 motors that are bad, so we can't push them back. And that's coming from a recommendation from Todd Townsend from Townsend. He was in the area. He looked at them. He did an assessment. And if we push them back, we might not get them back out, but they're not going to collapse. So we're okay, right?
Okay.
So that's the main thing is the kids can use it. We won't push them back in because we're gonna get them back out. And then we involved Mandy Reynolds in the conversation, and we said, Mandy, if we push them in, we might not get them out. And she's like, absolutely, we're not pushing them in. We got to take care of our kids over lunch hour. So PE got a little bit smaller, but it's been okay. It's been functioning. So the main thing, like DK said, is let's get this thing done. And it's the west side. I know the recommended actions says west side, but it is the west side. It's not the east side. Let's get in the queue. Let's get the fabrication and manufacturing going. So that's the main thing.
And when would these be installed then, over the summer?
Over the summer,
Okay.
we're looking, right now, talking with Todd, we're looking probably the end of July is most favorable, or the first week of August. And then we start thinking about school opening, but that's where the openings in the queue are at.
Okay.
Which is why we considered, with the hefty schedule tonight, we considered kicking this down to the next meeting, but just that additional time in the queue, or not getting us in the queue for that additional time, could be the difference of, us getting ready to ramp up school and the contractor showing up to tear out and install bleachers.
Right.
So it just makes sense to do it.
Right.
And I will, depending on how the vote goes, I will email to get the ball rolling at the end of this meeting,
Okay.
however it goes. So the communication will be out there, and I'll carbon copy in to get a PO going if that's the way to go. But
Okay.
it'll happen tonight. So
All right. Does anyone else have any questions?
When was the last time these were replaced? Do we know that?
they're about a 28 to 32 year vintage is what Todd was telling me. So you start doing the math. I think it was after I was out of high school, right when I got out.
I'm doing that math, Randy.
I'm doing that math. So you're saying I use those bleachers? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, put it this way, the motors that are bad, the motors that are shot, we can't get. So
Right.
we've got our money's worth, I know.
Absolutely.
So
Okay, if there's no other questions? All right. right. 8.02, safety upgrades for the high school baseball, softball fields.
Yeah, so again, I'll make a few comments. Randy can follow that up, and I think we've got Jim Dermody and the proposed contractor here, if there's more that needs to be discussed. We have other folks because we know it's a heavy ticket item, but just to explain a little bit, you know, baseball fields, over the course of time, if there's not regular maintenance done, they tend to deteriorate significantly. They can look pretty, but it doesn't mean that they're in good playing order, and we're at a point we've been kind of, in a very minor way, nursing them each year, trying to fill in holes and whatnot, and it's just been in bad need of you know, some stripping and laser grading. And we've thought about a lot of things with how to remedy the field, and it's really down to this point that, you know, before we can even roll this season, we need to make sure it's safe, not only for our kids, but the kids from visiting teams, both softball and baseball. We could have done a lot more, even with this hefty price tag. It could have been a significant more amount of work, which then you start questioning if it makes more sense to do, you know, a complete overhaul. Maybe consider synthetic turf, something like that. So even though it looks like a hefty ticket, and I know I pressed Randy back and forth a number of times to consider quite a few things, and he did. I appreciate that. And so here we are, and I'm convinced with these needs. I'm convinced with the items that have been selected to be done. And again, it could have been a lot more. There could have been many, many more things that we did. But I think this is a good, ample starting point that will buy us a number of years of service on our field. So Randy, I'll let you follow that up.
Yeah, so this started back in the fall, October. And Jim Dermody approached me and some coaches, and this has been a team project. This isn't just a buildings and grounds project. This has been a team project from the beginning, and Jim's been involved with it the whole way, and so the coaches, Coach Waters, and he has another coach that has been involved with this. So we've had meetings. We've done. DK would say, hey, let's look at the infield only, and we look at the infield only, and we look at the outfield only. So yeah, we've been charged with a task, and it's very much needed. And I don't believe in you know, when I'm a school board member, I never embarrass anybody, and I don't intend to embarrass anybody. But when we talk about we need some attention to this situation and the lack thereof, it's a tough thing, okay? But at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? So it is what it is, but we need to take care of the situation. DK said it better than I could say it. With this project, we could get 10 years out of these fields, but that means we have to do maintenance. And Don's here with Diamond Pro to answer some technical questions if you have some, and Jim's here as a member of the team. This was not simply a Randy decision or recommendation. This was definitely a team effort moving forward.
And I'll add to that too. Just, you know, Randy mentioned starting this year. I think Jim would echo that this has really been a starting conversation every year for a number of years. I know that it's one of the first things that I did when I walked with Jim and Joel and Jeff. We spent a significant amount of time that day on the baseball and softball fields. And I think what we've typically done is we get sticker shy or shock.
Shock, yeah.
A little bit of both. And then we kind of take care of some things in-house. And it may address a little bit, but then what maybe would have been X number of thousands is compounded in the following year. And I think that we've probably been playing that game, no pun intended, for a number of years. And so it's time that we stop trying to put a Band-Aid on things. And not that this is, I mean, I guess this is a Band-Aid itself, but it's a Band-Aid that gets us years versus just something that gets us through a season or part of a season, because I think in the past, it really wasn't even getting us safely through a whole season. And, you know, I did my own research on these very things, and you don't have to go far. You can Google some of this stuff in related injuries, you know, the bad ball hops and things like that, and it's a significant concern. And I think protecting our kids needs to always be a number one priority. So again, and we've got it budgeted. We've got the dollars rationed appropriately to be able to do this and not shortchange our other needed projects. So it's time to do something and not stand there clinching every time we have a home game, either on the girls' field or the boys' field, and worry that something's going to go wrong.
Are there any questions?
I guess my only question is, yeah, this is a big expense, but how do we ensure that, 5 years from now, we don't have the same issue? Because, I mean, as I watch those fields be maintained year after year, it's been marginal, it's been by coaches, it hasn't typically been building and grounds people doing that. We don't necessarily have the right equipment for it. I mean, how do we avoid $100,000 every 5 or 6 years without going $1 million to put artificial turf in? And that still doesn't solve the problem.
Well, I'll give an answer, and Jim, if you have anything additional you want to add, please do. But I think the tough pill to swallow is to maintain safe fields. Every 5 years or so, you're probably going to be putting that amount of money into them, or depending, just the yearly maintenance to keep the deterioration from happening, whether it's in one lump sum or you're every year incrementally making sure that things aren't going in the wrong direction, because they take a lot of wear and tear, and the elements are a lot of wear and tear on fields. But that's why at some point it's probably a cost-benefit analysis to really look at the benefits of synthetic turf, because while it's not lay it down and you don't have to touch it. We already know that. We have that experience through our football field, but there are some safety things that aren't quite reoccurring from the elements every year. So I think at some point we would do a cost-benefit analysis. But again, as I said earlier, I think if we looked at the whole ticket on this, it was about double, if not even more than double, of where we're bringing you. And that is basically if we'd be stripping everything, laser grading everything, redoing the tracks, all the infield, everything, from fence to home plate and dugouts and all, we'd be way beyond this. So some of those things aren't going to be addressed. So it may be that in a number of years, it's that we're addressing those additional things, and at that point in time, we may say, let's do that cost-benefit analysis and play this out over a number of years and see what makes the most sense. Do we keep incrementally spending money? But I do know this, and I'm convinced of this. Your observation is exactly correct, Bob, and that's not. I know you don't say that with any disrespect to what the coaches are doing and such, but it just has not been a priority in the maintenance level, and we need to make it a priority because it's a safety matter. And so instead of it being incrementally over years, it's kind of a big lump sum. Jim, you have any additional thoughts on that?
No, you said it well. I mean, I know Randy said that, if done well, you get 10 years, but I don't think you can put a year on a good grass infield, because if it gets the work it needs every year, it lasts 25, 30 years, a good grass infield. So I think that's the issue that we're in now. We're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because this right here is just really kind of the tip of the iceberg of what probably needs to be done or could be done down there, but it's also what needs to be done right now for our fields to be playable this year.
Are we doing anything to remove the grass The grass that goes from third to home and home to first, is that coming out or is it staying
Yeah.
out or in?
We, it would come out, yeah. We moved it. And honestly, I think that was done because it was easier to maintain that way.
Yeah.
But on annual maintenance efforts, and there's things that Don explained to us that what should happen before a baseball game or before a softball game and what should happen after the game. And to your point, Bob, that hasn't happened. And it hasn't happened from a building and grounds perspective, but there's some things that Don had talked to us about, hey, your baseball players can do this little thing here. And we got rakes, but we don't have everything we need. So there's a training component that's involved with that. And also, part of the things that we talked to Don about was that, you know, after the year's over, he can come over and for a fee, do an assessment and say, hey, this is what we did good, this is what we need to do better, so we can adjust to our efforts. So there's another attention level that we need to give this. Did I say that right, Don?
Just to comment on what Jim said, same way, I don't think you can put years on it. It basically comes down to what you were saying is maintenance. And part of what we're suggesting here is that we will work with your people to help maintain it better. What we're gonna do, if you pick us, down the road, 2 years, 3 years, you might have to come back in and do a top dressing. You know, add something a little bit to it, because it's gonna get beat down. You know, but you're not gonna spend the kind of money like you're proposing here now to take care of a lot of safety issues on it. But our whole program, I've been in this for over 25 years now, is to not do it and walk away. It's to do it and partner with you. Because I always tell people, when we walk away, it'll be pristine. And in 30 days, you can destroy it. Just by how you don't take care of it or how you take care of it wrong. And the two guys that are working with me now have, 15 years, 20 years in Division I groundskeeping, so they know. And the one that I used to work with took care of Rosenblatt. So there's a lot of experience there of not just to do the job, but to help you maintain, show you the way to do it.
Are there any other questions? So how long will this take?
Do you know Mother Nature real well?
I understand that, but if the weather was pristine, was great, is it a week, a 2 week, a month?
I would say probably if we had good weather, I would guesstimate 2 weeks.
Okay.
But there's some things we can do, weather permitting, and the three of us have talked about where they could go if it gets to the point where they have to go someplace else to practice, or to that with Iowa Western and that, is, for instance, on the baseball warning track. That's something we can start edging out and working on right away, because once we tear sod out, right now we can't really get sod. And they're predicting with this cold shot we got come here, it's probably going to be around the 1st of April, first week of April and something like that. The bullpens on the baseball, redoing those are things we can do outside, weather permitting, without tearing the field up right away. So it'll be a scheduling with Jim and Randy, and then also the coaches on how we proceed through this. But I'm going to speculate weather, good weather, 2 weeks.
Okay, all right, because that was my next question, is that what's the plan if you can't get to it, and with the season coming up and everything, so you have that all figured out.
We have great partners in Iowa Western. We've had conversations with them already. We also have the Council Parks and Rec, multiple fields down there too that reached out, so I think we can, won't be, obviously never going to be the greatest situation, but.
Correct. Right, okay.
What like we talked about earlier was with him being the athletic, I was the head coach at Bellevue West for 17 years, then in Millard West. What you can do in some of those, the early contests, you know, you play home and away. You can go away to begin with, and then come back and play at home later, because they're home and away contests. So that helps you also.
Yeah, good. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you. 8.03, handwriting and keyboarding resource proposal.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Kim to give us a little bit of information regarding this proposal, and she has some folks with her to back up if needed, I suppose. So I'll turn it over to Kim.
Greetings. First, I have to share a really fast story. During the budget hearing, I guess it's called, right? I was with Andrea for at least the first, I don't know, fourth of the slides, maybe half of the slides. And then my mind went back to the weekend, and my son, my youngest, oldest grandson, he just turned 5, so he's a new 5-year-old. And he goes, "Oh, Grandma, I love you so much." I said, "Oh, honey, I love you more than you could even imagine." And he goes, "Like 50-30? And I had my mind around that, because at 5, if you can think of the number 55, doesn't it kind of make sense? 55, 56, 50-20, 50-30. Then he blew my mind, which is where I was with you in your presentation. He says, "Oh, I love you 50-30 million hundreds." And then I thought, I'm so grateful for the experts that we have in the room tonight.
It's a legitimate number.
Right?
Yes.
It was just so cute. And thinking about the experts in the room, I just wanted to give you guys a really brief history on how this came about, because I did not include that, and because I try to keep this to one page whenever I can, with links, of course. But what started all this was during classroom visits. The CRUF principal, Erica, during her classroom visits, she noticed that there was a variety of resources, materials that were being used in the classrooms to help with the teaching of handwriting, of printing, things like that, right? And so she thought, wouldn't it be great? It's always better if we can have a coherent system, a consistency between classrooms, et cetera, when it comes to resources, when it comes to instruction. And so she brought it back to her building leadership team, which is a group of hardworking teachers, of one which we have back here, Amy Higginbotham. She's one of our representatives. When I asked if anybody could come from our group to just offer support, and if there were any questions I wanted to hand off, they'd be available to take them as well. So that's what brought us to the building leadership team said, well, yeah, that makes absolute sense. And so we said, okay, so what should we do? And so there was some research done, and not only research, but we actually talked to the gentleman at the company, and they were doing some training at the time over the last couple of months, and he gave us, I'm pretty sure it was all gratis, it was also all free for us, some seats in those virtual webinars, live virtual webinars, so that our BLT members, our building leadership team members, could actually listen to those experts from the company and see what those products look like in action, and et cetera. So besides the fact that we looked it over and we asked the questions of other experts that we knew of, they were able to look at it firsthand, and also we asked for samples. So they were actually able to look at it with it in their hands as well. So after all of that, we said, yes, it looks like something we want to move forward with, so what do we do, Kim? And so that's where I came in and said, well, let's write up the proposal, get the costs of what we're talking about, and go talk to the board. And so that's what led us to tonight. So again, we're here to answer any questions. I wasn't going to repeat what was in front of you in your packet, but if you have specific questions of us, please ask. And if I can't answer them, I'm sure one of the ladies behind me will as well.
Is there any questions? Is this printing and cursive writing?
Just print.
Just printing? Okay.
Yes. We, a few years ago, I can't remember exactly how many years ago, but a few years ago with our content teams, developed a policy as far as, well, I wouldn't say policy, developed a statement that said we weren't going to officially teach cursive writing anymore.
That's what I thought.
If the teachers had the opportunity with all the other things they have to teach and instruct to include it, they could, but we don't have it as a standardized, everybody does cursive anymore. With the onset of computers and all that, it's less of a, research would show that it's less of a need.
And this, to clarify, is for pre-K and 1 grades
Yes.
anyway, which would.
Yes, pre-K, K and 1. Mhm.
But, I mean, but looking at the equipment or books or supplies, I mean, we're only ordering 5 pre-K, so it's really kindergartner in 1st grade.
It does include PK, within that, their classroom kits. And so for the 13 kids or 15, up to 15?
Well, if they had 2 classes, it could be up to 25 kids, 26 kids.
13 at a time, they would have the resources within those kits. We also thought about, are there others that are there additional materials for those pre-K classes? And what we decided was, when you look at the training videos, they look at doing 3 and 4 students at a time, so small group learning. And so that's what's involved in the kits themselves at that $664. So we talked about, should we order more if they want to do every kit at one time? And what we decided was to wait and see, because to get more materials would just be a matter of a week or so, and we'd be able to get more. But to have it already and then not need it, if we felt, even if it was only $10 or $20, we felt it was money that we could save.
And not only that, but I think also when you look at handwriting to just instruct a whole group, sometimes you need to have them close to be able to see how they're, where they're pulling down and all of that. So that's where we thought we would just wait and see how it went, and then if they, if they thought, no, I'd rather do this whole group, then we can talk through that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that question. Appreciate it. Others?
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kim.
All right, 8.04, E-rate technology purchases.
Now, I'll turn this over to Dave pretty quick, but I just want to make sure we say up front, anybody online and the board to know, this will actually be 3 recommended motions at the end within. So when we get down to doing our action items in this one agenda item, there will be 3 motions. So just so that doesn't, since it's a lengthy agenda already, just that doesn't get somebody mixed up on the numbers.
Okay.
So, Dave?
I provided you with some language about the E-rate program itself at the federal level. It is truly a beneficial federal program for schools. There are 2 main categories of possible expenditure in E-rate. The first deals with providing internet connectivity services, and that is category 1 services. And the second is providing equipment that enables internet services to be provided for kids, and that's the category 2. Category 1 is funded every year at the federal level. We qualify as a 60% discount school. What that really means is that for every dollar the bill comes in at from the provider, we pay 40 cents. Okay, get a 60% discount. There are requests for proposal and bidding procedures that we have to follow, and all of those have been followed for these projects. I'd like to talk through the category 1 component first. Technically, we have 2 category 1 projects. but one is a continuation from prior years, and that's our internet service provider. It's not part of what you see here tonight, because we have an ongoing contract, or a 3-year contract. We are in the second year of that 3-year contract now, so we didn't need to have you come back at that one again. But that provides internet connectivity for the district. We have a 5 gigabit connection to the internet through Arion, which is our internet service provider. The Category 1 project that we really need to have you consider now is to replace the licensed frequency point-to-point wireless connection that serves the Kraft building. Right now, there is no fiber available near Kraft. The closest fiber would either be on the other side of the interstate at the Mid-America Center or clear over by the stoplight on Highway 92. The city provides their stoplights with fiber. And to move fiber that far to the Kraft facility is a multiple $100,000 kind of problem. And so we've had here in our district some very good success using a licensed frequency that's an 11 gigahertz band, point-to-point carrier class wireless link to provide those services instead. Right now, our present wireless link is at 260 megabits, to give you an idea, 260 megabits to serve the entire building. What we have found, especially this year, is as the increased need happens on the part of kids, the more we get kids in using technologies, the more we're after remote services for kids, the more we get after remote learning opportunities for kids, Zoom meetings, etc., the more pressure there is on that bandwidth. And there are certain times of the day that are very troublesome for us now. That link provides all of our internet services, all of our data services, and all of our phone services for Kraft as well. We've prioritized phone really high, and data needs to hold back because, let's face it, phone's going to be more important in an emergency situation than the computer would. We sought bids from 3 different companies. We got 2 responses. The 2 vendors we're very comfortable with. Calhoun Communications is the vendor that is an incumbent vendor. They presently have provided us with our services. The radios that we have in place now and the antennas we have in place now were installed by Calhoun Communications. SmartWave Technologies is the company that is engaged with the Council Bluffs City and the Council Bluffs Community Schools to provide access to the public for the Blink project in town. And they've come highly recommended, no problem using them as well. The bids were there. We deemed that they were equivalent, and as you can see on the scoring matrix, they were not just the low bid, but they were also the highest point getter in our scoring matrix, which is a requirement of the E-rate funding stream. So the first one is for a replacement of our present Kraft point-to-point licensed 11 gigahertz wireless connection.
Did you do that just not too long ago? Like,
We upgraded the software.
okay.
Yeah. We moved it from 160 megabits to 260 megabits from a software perspective.
Yeah, because I remember we were talking about the issues with connectivity down there. Okay.
Yeah. This moves the connection from 260 to 1 gigabit
Got it.
connection, so it's about 4 times as fast. Okay. The next part of the process deals with Category 2 funding. Category 2 at the E-rate level is on a 5-year cycle. There's a $150 per student allocation available that is a cap on the total expenditures that can be done in that 5-year period for applied projects. For us, that totals about $480,000 worth of projects that we could put out for bid and get a discount toward then. This is well within the category 2 limits that we have. The first one is to look at our networking equipment. Now what this really means is our switches in the closets. Every switch that we have in the district, with the exception of 3, which are our core layer 3 switches, one at the high school, one at the middle school, and one at Craft, are out of sale. They're end of life for their sale, and they're end of life for support now. That happened January of last year. And so it's really time to look at that layer of our infrastructure and take care of the problem. Right now, there were 6 responses to the bid. We deemed that 2 of those responses were not equivalent. One responded in a very generic kind of fashion, we'll provide anything you want, and then it was a big sales pitch. And then the other was not equivalent equipment to the equipment that we specified in the RFP. So the 4 responses were from Heartland, IP Pathways, ThinkSpace IT, and RTI. It happens that all 4 of those vendors we deemed to be local. Heartland has an office in Omaha and in Des Moines and in Harlan. ThinkSpace IT, I believe, is in either Creston or Clarinda. RTI has an office in Omaha and North Sioux City, South Dakota, and IP Pathways has an office in Omaha and in Des Moines. We have been using IP Pathways for consulting work in maintaining our network now. So we deemed them to be the incumbent vendor, but RTI is the vendor we bought all of our server resources from and all of our Chromebook resources from for the last 15 years. They have been the low bidder for all of those projects. So we're very comfortable with them. The low bid was RTI, and you notice the top 2 vendors were very close in their overall ratings this time, but the low price was RTI, so we would recommend that you approve the equipment from RTI. We also had option alternates involved, and the alternates this time were for installation and configuration of the equipment. And RTI's response was, we thought, favorable. It was complete. So we'd like to recommend that we also engage them for installation and configuration as well. Okay. The second category 2 component is looking at uninterruptible power supplies for the 15 closets that we have in the district. And what we have chosen to do is start small with this. We're recommending 1 UPS for each of the major closets in the district that will back up and provide services for about 11 minutes for emergency purposes for the wireless and the phone structures that we have in the system. We'll probably look at coming back at this at a later time to add more capability in that regard. But really, right now, our intention is to have a monitored, manageable UPS structure. If the power goes down, we get alerts appropriately that allows us to gracefully down servers, gracefully down equipment as when power does go off. It conditions the power, so it provides a more stable power resource for all of the phones and APs in the system, and gives us 11 more minutes, or thereabouts, approximately 11 more minutes of emergency use of the phone structures until the power is completely gone. Low bid on that was RTI. So bottom line, there are 3 components to the E-rate request. One is for a category 1 to replace the Craft Wireless, and that would be SmartWave Technologies And then the other two are for the networking equipment, which is switches, aggregate switches, access switches, all the cabling, wire, patch cabling, et cetera, configuration and installation. And then the final is for UPSs. There are 15 UPSs in the bid. And they're distributed across all 4 buildings. An interesting aside also for E-rate is not eligible. This building and the operations building are not eligible for us to use E-rate resources for. So when we look at putting the switches in it at the operations building, we will have to fund those completely ourselves. We won't be able to tap the discounts that we're able to tap for this resource here.
Are there any questions? All right, thank you very much. Eight 8.05 Chromebook replacement cycle purchase.
I go right back to Dave for this.
The next item deals with our maintenance cycle for Chromebooks. We are recommending that we purchase 3 sections worth of Chromebooks this year. That's 800 devices. We're recommending that we go with the flip touchscreen dual camera model that we last bought for our littles at Creft and at Titan Hill. Those devices have proven to be outstanding devices, very durable, much more durable than we expected, actually. Fine devices. They're 3rd generation of that particular model, and so we went to 5 vendors. We got responses from 3 vendors to the specifications that we requested, and they're listed on the sheet here. Notice 2 of them came in at the same price. Highly competitive pricing. $282 a piece for these devices is a very, very good price. I would recommend going with our known vendor, and that's Riverside Technologies, which is the local vendor in this regard. And we can also use some ESSER money for this particular kind of expenditure, and so instead of using general fund money, we would plan to use ESSER money for this particular item. You also may recall that we usually do this in May. We've chosen to bring this to you in March because of the supply chain problems that exist right now. It doesn't matter whether it's bleacher parts or computer devices. We need to get on this early. So we have been assured that delivery of these would be in July or August if we order them now. If we wait until May, we could be talking November, December. So we really needed to accelerate the process this year to get it on the ticket.
Is this similar to prior years where it's like the 9th graders, the 6th graders, and then another grade that's
It's exactly
starts with
right.
these? What's the 3rd grade?
We haven't actually decided that yet.
Okay.
It could be 10th grade, it could be 7th grade. We haven't decided.
Did the 10th graders not get new ones this year as 9th graders?
They got new ones this year as 9th graders. Mhm. Yeah, and then we could use those newer ones for other grades.
Okay.
The other choice would be to look at 4th grade, but we haven't decided yet. 4th grade would put all of our pre-K through 4th grade all in the same model then, and so there's some real advantages to that as well.
Okay.
How many total Chromebooks do we have in the network now?
We have about 3,000 running operationally all the time, every day. And then we have another 750 or 800 as loaners, as spares. And an interesting aside there is that they have an end of life also. Google actually stops sending updates to them on a cycle. And I can certainly provide you with that cycle.
Yeah, I was just curious on the number. I knew it was a big number. I just didn't know
Yeah,
how big
we have
it was.
about 3,000. We provide one-to-one access for every kid in the district.
Yep.
So, and then in addition to that, there are the normal repair, you know, we might have 100 out for, or being repaired, either internally or through warranty work. And then we have a number of teachers that are using them also. We're also going to be coming to you with a request to do about a third of the teacher laptops, but we're considering moving toward some higher-end Chromebooks for that purpose, for those who that makes sense for.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Go on to 8.06, 402, series policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the second read.
Yeah, I don't think we really had many questions on these. They're very straightforward in the first read, and I didn't receive any additional questions between the first read and the second read. I don't, you know, again, this stays in the 400 series, which primarily, well, it's all about employees. We've marched through the most difficult ones to review already, and we're getting to the second half. In fact, we'll probably wrap up the 400 series next month. And so unless there are other questions, I think we're ready to move forward on these. I will point out, both for this and the next set that we're bringing, just a reminder of something we discussed last time, that we're getting far enough along here with the 400 series being so extensive that you're not always going to see a corresponding delete add, like we've said in the past. And first of all, just for anyone listening, refresher, that is not because we have horrible policies necessarily. There are some times where we catch a legal update that wasn't done in a review, and it needs to be fixed. But most often it's because things like the legal references need to be updated, the numbering needs to be aligned, maybe even the titling changed a little bit for consistency. But now, because the way these are coming forward and our numbers in alignment with IASB are quite different. So when you see one that is just deleted, it means one of two things. It means either it's already replicated in other policies, or it means that we've already approved an IASB in a previous read that covers for that. So I want everyone to rest assured there's never a time where we're just disregarding a policy thinking we don't need to talk about that anymore. It means it's already covered in one way or the other. So anyway, again, for this series, second read, unless there are further questions, I think we're good to go.
Did anyone have any comments or questions on this series on the second read? Okay. 8.07, 403 series policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the first read.
Continuation, other than this is a new set with the 403, also explained. It may sound confusing to some folks listening when we say 403, but it also includes some for 405, some 410, some 411, some 413. We're focusing on our current 403s and reviewing them, and that results in some of those policies switching for alignment to maybe a 410 or a 411 or 413. But this is predominantly coming from the 403, which is small, as you can see, and not anything that is significant change. Again, just a lot of alignment updates, legal references, and cleaning things up. And if there are no questions tonight, please know anytime between first and second read. If there are any, don't hesitate to let me know, and I'll make sure when if I hear from individuals about questions, I'll always bring that information forward at the next read.
Anyone have any comments, questions? Okay. Let's see. We'll go on to 8.08, and we'll include 8.09. Both of these are closed session per Iowa Code 21.51A. For closed session is appropriate to review or discuss records which are required or authorized. Closed session for an employee request is for the 8.08. And then the 8.09 is per Iowa Code 21.51A to review or discuss records which are required and authorized by state or federal law to be kept confidential. So we will not be coming back out of closed session to go back into vote to go back into closed session. So with this vote, we need to vote to go into closed session and take care of both 8.08, an employee request for other paid or unpaid leave, and we have multiple late filed open enrollment requests. So with that, can I get a motion to go into closed session for these two line items?
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stalfer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyland?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. Okay, we are back in open session, and according to our agenda, it is comments and suggestions from our audience. Do we have anyone listening online?
None with questions.
Gotcha, thank you. All right, we'll go to action items. 10.01, bleacher purchase and installation for the middle school. Can I get a motion, please?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Hendricks?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Towns End Company for the bleacher replacement and installation on, we were west side, weren't we? Of the middle school gym at the cost of $38,441.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. 10.02, safety upgrades to the high school baseball, softball fields.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks?
I'd like to make a motion to approve B&D Diamond Pro Inc. as a contractor for the needed work and reservations to the high school baseball and softball fields for $134,395.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a clarification on this. They did say after they got done with the field, it is pristine, they will provide training? Okay. All right, I just kind of scanned through their proposal. That's not specifically addressed. So I'd just like to make sure that we're going to spend $130,000 that they do provide training.
Yes, they will provide training.
Okay.
Anyone else? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. 10.03, handwriting and keyboarding resource proposal.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of handwriting without tiers and keyboarding without tiers for grades PK through 1 for a total of $17,844.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yeah, yes, sorry.
Mr. Wyledge? Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. 10.04, E-rate technology purchase.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks?
I'll be making 3 separate motions, so I'll do them one at a time.
All right.
A motion to approve the purchase of licensed wireless point-to-point connections from SmartWave not to exceed $34,719, pending funding approval for the USA E-rate process and resulting in a district cost totaling $13,877.60.
Second.
And we have a second. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes.
Madam Chairman, then a second motion to approve the purchase of all networking switching devices specified in the response, including equipment licensing for 5 years, optics, all required cabling, installation, configuration from Riverside Technologies not to exceed $299,877.40 pending funding approval through the US AC E-rate process and resulting in a district cost of $119,950.96.
Second.
We have a second on that. Any discussion on the second motion? Vote, please.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. And then the third motion?
To approve the purchase of all UPS devices specified in the response, including management software from Riverside Technologies, not to exceed $20,334.15, pending funding approval through the USAC E-rate process and resulting in a district cost of $8,133.66.
Second.
We have a second on that. Is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. We'll go on to 10.05, Chromebook replacement cycle purchase.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of 800 HP Chromebook X36011 G3E Chromebooks from RTI for a total of $225,600.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. 10.06, 402 series policies, reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the second read.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve presented policies included in the 402, 405, and 408 series and all accompanying regulations exhibits on the second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. 10.07, 403 series policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the first read.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the presented policies included in the 403, 405, 410, 411, and 413 series and all accompanying regulations and exhibits on the first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. 10.08, employee request for other paid or unpaid leave.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the employee's request as is presented pertaining to personal leave and include that would not include the payment of sub pay for that period.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. 10.09, multiple late filed open enrollment requests. We'll do these all separate, so I would need a motion for student A.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion that we deny student A's open enroll request that was presented in closed session.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. For student B,
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to deny student B's an open enrollment request that was presented in closed session.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Is it B? Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. For student C,
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve, we're on student C, aren't we? Student C's open enroll request, to deny student C's open enroll request presented in closed session.
Clarity, you said deny, correct?
Deny.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. And the final one, student D.
Madam Chairperson,
Mr. Houston.
I'd like to make a motion that we deny student D's application for open enrollment.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stofford,
Abstain.
Mr. Wyledge,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Abstain.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. And now the next board meeting will be April 5th, correct?
ma'am.
Anything else future of interest or future board meetings?
No, I don't think so.
I'll be at 6:30. Anna will be sending out, since we have a lengthy agenda, she will be sending out the superintendent evaluation, and I'll send out something with that also. And so have a couple weeks to get that into me, and we will hopefully be able to, if everyone's here, go to closed session to discuss that. Anything else from anyone? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?